the personal statement, the college essay, the big one that generates a lot of anxiety, doesn't necessarily have to. And so first of all, let's start with a little background. What is this essay? It has a lot of names. You may have heard it referred to as the personal statement, the college essay, but personal is an important word. So what it is a single essay that is up to 650 words, which goes to all the colleges on the Common Application. So let's think for a second about what its function is, because I think understanding what its function is and what it's supposed to do really helps you think about what to write and how to write. So it should reveal a little bit about how the student is, who the student is, excuse me, something about the student that shows a little bit of personality and something specific. It should generally offer information that is not found elsewhere in the application. So that's something to think about too. What have I not shared yet? It should demonstrate some kind of thoughtfulness, some insight, perhaps some vulnerability and a little humanity. But most importantly, it needs to be genuine and authentic, not kind of manufactured or contrived in any way, and definitely in the student's voice. And sometimes students are surprised by this concept of showing vulnerability or humanity because they think they have to appear to have it all together. But you know that when you read something where somebody is sharing something about themselves in a vulnerable way, it makes us feel connected to the person, and that will happen to the reader as well. Another thing it can do, it doesn't have to, but it can support a sort of narrative or intentional theme that is running throughout the application. It should show some writing proficiency. Now, let's remember, they are not looking for Pulitzer Prize winning writing, and it is definitely supposed to be written by a 17-year-old kid. But it should just show that the student can string some thoughts together, communicate some clarity of thought, and knows the basic rules of writing. It doesn't have to be flawless without a single semicolon out of place, but it should show clear writing proficiency. So those are the things that it should be. Let's talk about some don'ts, some things it shouldn't be. And these are also sort of common misconceptions that I find people have about what the essay should be. So first of all, it should definitely not repeat the resume. Sometimes that is what happens, where it ends up being a laundry list of I did this, I did this, I did this. So it's not for that. It also should not focus on what I call making the student look impressive. It's not all about looking good. Just as I mentioned a minute ago, we tend to connect more when people share about imperfection or a struggle or some vulnerability. But this can be hard for students to, feel like they're showing the college a flaw and that's going to give the college a reason to reject them. And that's not at all how this process works. The vast majority of colleges in this country practice some kind, well, many colleges, I should say, practice some kind of holistic admissions, meaning they really try to get a sense of the whole person, including, what they might share about themselves that isn't perfect. And also, along with the not having the goal be to look impressive, don't exaggerate, don't embellish, don't make things up that you didn't do. Along those same lines, don't sometimes students feel like they have to have a really grand, epic topic that they really have to talk about how they're going to solve world peace or world hunger or whatever it might be. And again, sort of looking impressive and looking like they have to share these really big ideas. And that is with rare instances, I can't really even think of an essay that I've seen like that that has worked, but there probably are some. But again, the idea is that the essay should be about the student, not about this big topic. So that's another possible trap. Now, this may sound like a little bit of a contradiction, but also don't be too modest. What they want to hear is who are you? What matters to you and why? So try to just let go of that idea of writing about what it is colleges want to hear. I can tell you that those essays that start from that point are almost always super boring, super generic, and look like lots of other people's essays. Now let's talk about what the role it plays in the admissions process and how important it is. First of all, just be really clear, as with so many things with admissions, it's going to vary by campus. Different campuses emphasize different things. So I'm going to be speaking in very general terms. But just keep that in mind. The most important thing, it is not the most important element of the application. It is not the be all and end all. My theory as to why it tends to have that reputation and why you see so much hand wringing around the essay, usually in August, September, and October, as the student is approaching or starting senior year. And here's my theory. My theory is that families kind of wake up to the fact that everything else that's in the application is already kind of set. Like the grades are what they are, the test scores are what they are, the extracurriculars are not going to change that much. And so they suddenly panic and go, oh my gosh, I only have one last chance to impress colleges. So they pour all of that anxiety into the essay. And that's really important to remember. It only has to be good enough. It doesn't have to be the most amazing thing ever. And that is because it is just about never a game changer. Now, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just not the high stakes thing that people tend to think it is. A couple things to think about in terms of how it does matter. So, one thing to consider is if you're applying test optional, and many, many, many colleges in this country are test optional, that means that every other element of the application takes on slightly more importance. So, that's the transcript, that's the letters of recommendation if the college takes them, it's test scores if the college, if well, yeah, if it's test, let's say test optional, say you're not using scores, but every other piece of the pie gets a little bigger. So it's not that the essay takes on outsized importance if the application is without test scores. It just means everything, including the essay, gets a little more weight. It can be a great place for students to really show how ready they are and how excited they are for college, how they are going to fit on a campus and what they might contribute and how they're going to be part of that community. It's also a chance for them to share kind of unique and backgrounds and perspectives that also might offer unique contributions to campus. And here's something that's actually pretty important is it can actually help the admissions rep advocate for the student because the way admissions works in a lot of offices is that the rep who manages that particular territory will sort of be in charge of all the applications from a given geographical area. And when they go into committee, is what they call it, to kind of debate whether they're going to accept students or not, the rep who's in whose territory the student is kind of like that student's lawyer, and they will advocate for them. So just basics on how to write it. It's no different really than writing anything else, but just roughly there are sort of four phases. One is brainstorming and developing a topic. Next is sort of outlining and drafting. Number three, rewriting. And this is probably the one I'm going to spend a minute on because I find so many students are accustomed to writing things in a single draft. They don't have a lot of time with the way they write at school. And of course, there's less and less writing that's being assigned to be done at home because of concerns about AI and so forth. So students often have not had a lot of practice with a multi-draft writing process. So that's something I always emphasize to students. I have had kids take 13 drafts to come up with a personal statement. That's an outlier. It's usually probably 4 to 8 is more typical. I love to remind students that a lot of good writing starts as bad writing. So you just need to get something on the page and start with the knowledge that you're going to rewrite it. And then finally, the fourth phase is editing and polishing. And then have one qualified person, one person who really understands what college writing is supposed to look like, read that essay. It could be the counselor at school. It could be an English teacher who's trained in that. It could be somebody else, but don't get too much input from too many people. That is the fastest way to a boring essay where the student's voice gets squeezed out of it. I said this before, but it's worth mentioning again. Have fun. Pick something that is fun to write. It will be fun to read. When I'm brainstorming with students, I really watch for where students light up, and they suddenly are animated. I'm like, okay, there's something there. Let's go with that. Another tip, minimize what this overlaps a little bit, minimize descriptions, like detailed descriptions. Sometimes kids will find essays online or read them on TikTok or whatever, where people have these really flowery descriptions of things that don't have anything to do with the kid. Watch that. Also, minimize things like quotes. Sometimes people feel like they want to put a quote at the start of the essay. I would say that is rarely effective. It might be, but if it is, keep it short. Things like song lyrics, So again, the whole idea is to summarize this necessary information as quickly as possible because the colleges want to hear about the student, how they grew, what they learned. A tip that you hear for all writing, but is really valuable here: show, don't tell. You know, this is really meaningful to me because is boring. If I see you in action and how you're affected by what you're doing, I'm pulled in. So show, don't tell.